Every evening, the exact moment the sun went down into the horizon and darkness swallowed the village, a bent old woman shuffled to Oluchi's door. In a voice like dry bones scraping together, she whispered,
"My daughter, do you have anything left?"
"Yes, Mama, come, I still have a little for you tonight. Let me go inside and bring the food for you."
She always gave, even when her own stomach growled in pain, even when there was barely enough for one person. She scooped whatever was left and placed it gently into the old woman's wrinkled hands. The other women in the village watched in horror and warned her desperately.
"Oluchi, stop this
Oluchi,
madness.
Stop
That
this
woman
madness.
is not right at all.
That
Her
woman
house
is
stays
not
pitch black
right.
every night. Not one candle, not one spark of fire. No one has ever seen her eat a single bite. You're not helping an old woman. You're feeding something that doesn't belong here."
She is old and hungry, sisters. How can I turn her away?
But Oluchi only shook her head and said quietly, "She is old and hungry, sisters. How can I turn her away?" Until one fateful night, Oluchi handed over her last remaining food and said with kindness, "Here, Mama Uzo, eat and be strong." Then she did what no one in the village had ever dared to do. She followed the old woman straight into the swallowing darkness. What Oluchi saw that night changed everything. And trust me, you will never guess what happened next.
Let's go back to how it all began. But before I start, please share this video with at least 2 people, subscribe, like, and comment. This keeps me going. And do let me know which part of the world my wonderful Ivory Stories family is watching from. Now sit and enjoy the story.
Oluchi lived alone in the village of Ogwuta. She was not always alone. There had been a mother, a good woman with a loud laugh and very strong hands who made the best of a akwu in the whole compound and never let anyone leave her kitchen hungry. She was the kind of woman who always made the pot bigger than she needed, who always cooked a little extra, who always said the same thing when Oluchi asked her why she bothered. Because you never know who is coming to your door today. But the mother got sick at the end of the dry season. So her body went thin and her laugh went quiet and the strong hands became light hands that could not grip anything properly.
"Mother, I can't believe you're gone. Why'd you have to leave me?"
By the time the first rains came, she was gone. Oluchi was 20 years
Mama,
old. She had
miss
no
you so
husband.
much.
She had no father.
Why did you have to
He had
leave
left
me?
when she was very small and never
hurts
came back.
so much.
And by the time Oluchi was old enough to be angry about it, she was also old enough to understand that anger about a gone man is a fire that burns only you. She had 2 aunties who lived far away and sent money sometimes when they remembered and forgot when they did not. She had a small mud house with a thatched roof and a cooking pot, and a palm tree in the yard that gave her palm nuts when the season was good and gave her nothing when it was not. She was not rich. She was not poor in the way that breaks a person. She was just a young woman managing, the kind of managing that looks fine from the outside and feels, on the inside, like carrying water in your hands. You can do it, but you cannot stop moving or it will all spill. She pounded yam for other women in the compound on Monday and Wednesday mornings. She washed clothes for the teacher's wife on Tuesdays. The teacher's wife was not a difficult woman, but she was a particular one. She liked her wrappers folded in a specific way, and her husband's shirts hung in a specific order, and she checked both when Oluchi brought them back, and sometimes redid what was already done. Oluchi did not say anything about this. She needed the money. On Saturdays, she went to the market with ground nuts she had roasted herself on Friday evenings, was standing over the fire with sweat on her face and the smell of ground nuts in her hair and her clothes, and sometimes it felt like her actual skin. She sold them in small paper cones that she made herself from old newspaper. Some Saturdays she sold everything by noon. Some Saturdays she came home with half still in the basket. Every evening, without fail, she cooked, even when the soup was thin, even when she put more water in than was proper, even when the yam was small and the fish was small and the whole pot looked like it was trying its best and falling a little short. She cooked because her mother had told her that a woman who keeps her fire going is a woman who keeps her life going. And because the smell of something cooking, even something small, made the house feel less empty. She had one rule, her mother's rule. She had kept it for so long without thinking about it that it had stopped feeling like a rule and started feeling like her own nature. The way some people are afraid of the dark without being able to remember who first told them to be. Never let anyone go hungry at your door. It did not matter who they were. It did not matter what you had in the pot. If someone came to your door hungry and you had something, even a little something, even just enough, you gave. That was all. That was the whole rule. Oluchi kept it, even when it cost her, even when it had been costing her for a long time. Nobody knew when the old woman moved into the empty house at the edge of the compound. One morning she was simply there. The house had been empty for 2 years. Ever since old Papa Chukwu died and his children came from the city and took everything and locked the door and drove back down the main road and never returned. The door had stayed locked all that time. The windows had stayed shut. The yard in front had grown over with tall weeds and the kind of small tough plants that grow in neglected ground and do not care that nobody planted them. The children in the compound had started telling each other the house was a bad house. They dared each other to touch the door and run. None of them ever went inside. And then one morning, the weeds were gone. Not cut, gone. The ground in front of the door was swept clean and bare. The door was open a small crack. And a small bent figure was sitting on the step in the early light, looking at nothing in particular. Very still, the way very old people sit when they have been sitting in one place for so long that sitting has become the same as standing. Nobody went to greet her. The women in the compound watched from their own doorways with the careful faces of people who have decided to wait and see. The men coming back from the farm looked at the house and looked away and said nothing. The children stopped their daring game and moved their play to the other side of the compound. It was the kind of silence a community makes when something new has arrived and they have not yet decided what to make of it. Not hostile, not welcoming, just waiting. Oluchi was the only one who went. She poured a cup of water from her clay pot. She walked across the compound. She stood in front of the old woman and said good morning and asked her name. The old woman looked up. Her eyes were too bright. That was the first thing you noticed about her. The rest of her was small and worn and bent, but her eyes were sharp and clear and very bright, like 2 pieces of glass catching the morning light. She looked at Oluchi for a moment without blinking. "Mama Uso," she said. Her voice was slow and dry, like the sound of dry leaves moving. She took the water. She drank it. She handed the cup back. She said, "Thank you, my daughter. You have a good heart." Oluchi went back to her house. She did not think much about it. She had work to do. That evening, just as the sun went down and the compound turned from orange to grey to dark, she heard a knock. She opened her door. Mama Uzo was standing there, bent, small, holding her walking stick with both hands. The evening light was almost gone, and in what was left of it, the old woman looked like something carved from old wood, weathered and still and very patient. "My daughter," she said, "do you have anything left?" Oluchi looked at her. She looked at the pot behind her. There was enough for one person, just herself. She had not eaten since morning. A small thing, some cold akara she had bought at the market and finished quickly because she was hungry and in a hurry. She was hungry now. Her stomach knew it even if her face did not show it. She looked back at the old woman, at her bright eyes, at her hands on the walking stick, at the way she stood, very patient, not begging exactly, just asking. Like someone who has asked for things before and knows that sometimes the answer is yes, and sometimes the answer is no, and has made her peace with both. "Sit down, Mama," Oluchi said. "Let me dish for you." She brought out her one good stool. She dished everything that was in the pot onto her best enamel plate. She brought it out and put it in front of the old woman and went back inside so the old woman could eat without being watched, because that was what her mother had always done, given and then moved away because nobody wants to eat while someone is standing over them waiting for gratitude. When Mama Uzo finished, she stood. She called into the house. Oluchi came to the door. The old woman looked at her for a moment. "Thank you, my daughter," she said. "You will not regret this." Then she turned and walked away, slowly, all into the dark, her stick tapping on the red dirt, getting quieter, then gone. Oluchi closed her door. The compound was quiet. Her stomach was empty. She lit her small lamp and sat on her mat. She told herself she would eat in the morning. She lay down. She fell asleep faster than she expected, and she slept deeply, without the kind of thin, anxious half-sleep that usually came on the nights when things were tight. The next morning, Ngozi came. Ngozi lived 2 doors down. She was 35 years old and had 3 children and a husband who travelled for work, and she knew everything that happened in the compound before it had finished happening. She was not a mean woman. She was a practical woman, the kind that the compound relied on. She organised the cleaning of the shared paths. She mediated when neighbours argued. And she was the first person everyone called when something went wrong. She cared about Oluchi. That was important to understand. What she said next came from caring. She stood in Oluchi's doorway with her arms folded and her face arranged into the expression of a woman who has been waiting to say something since the night before. "I saw what you did last night," Ngozi said. Oluchi was sweeping. She kept sweeping. "Good morning, Ngozi. Don't good morning me. I saw you give that old woman your whole pot. You stood inside and watched her eat, and you did not eat yourself. I was not very hungry." Ngozi kissed her teeth loudly. "Oluchi, you live alone. You work every day. You need to eat." She came further into the doorway. "And that is not even the main thing. The main thing is, who is this woman? Where did she come from? So that you gave food to a stranger? A complete stranger who moved into an empty house in the night and nobody knows her family or her people or where she is from." She told me her name. "Her name?" Ngozi shook her head slowly. "Everybody has a name. That tells us nothing." Mama Kelechi appeared at her own door across the compound, drawn by the sound of Ngozi's voice the way she always was. She was a stout woman with a very serious face who had lived in the compound for 20 years and considered herself its elder, though nobody had elected her to anything. "Is it about that old woman?" Mama Kelechi called. "Yes," Ngozi called back. "I saw her too." Mama Kelechi walked over. She stood beside Ngozi in the doorway. "Oluchi, I want to ask you something. Have you seen smoke from her fire? Have you seen her fetch water? And have you seen her do anything? Anything at all? That a normal person living in a house does?" Oluchi thought about it. She had not. In the days since the old woman arrived, she had passed that house many times. The door was always closed. The windows were always shut. There was never any sound from inside. No cooking smell, no water being poured, no voice, nothing. "It is strange," she said quietly. "It is very, very strange," Mama Kelechi said. "And you are feeding a stranger whose house shows no sign of any human life. Think about that. Maybe she is just very private," Oluchi said. The 2 women looked at each other. "Be careful," Ngozi said. That was all. She went back to her house. Mama Kelechi stayed 1 moment longer. She looked at Oluchi with the expression of a woman who has already decided how this story ends and does not want to be the one to say it out loud. Then she went back to her own door. Oluchi stood alone in her compound. She looked at the old woman's house. Closed, dark, quiet. She told herself there were many reasons for a quiet house. Old people lived quietly. Old people who were new to a place kept to themselves. There was nothing strange about a closed door. She went back to sweeping. That evening, when Mama Uzo knocked and asked if there was anything left, Oluchi gave. 5 days later, Mama Uzo came back in the afternoon. The sun was still high. The compound was busy, women pounding, children running, the sound of Ngozi scolding one of her sons about something. The smell of different cooking fires mixing together in the hot air. It was the loudest part of the day, the part of the day when nobody felt alone. Mama Uzo walked through the gate slowly, her stick on the red dirt, her bent back, her eyes looking straight ahead. The compound did not stop moving exactly, but it shifted. The women's eyes went to her and then away. Ngozi's pounding slowed for a moment and then sped up again. Mama Kelechi, who was sitting outside cracking palm nuts, looked down at her work with a focus that was too sharp to be real. The landlord's wife, who was at the water tap, turned her back. Nobody greeted the old woman. Nobody looked at her directly. The compound parted around her the way water parts around a stone, not stopping, not touching, just moving around. Mama Uzo walked past all of them. She came to Oluchi's door. She knocked. Oluchi opened it. "My daughter," Mama Uzo said. Her voice was slow and dry as always. "I need something today. Not food. My fire has gone out, and I have nothing to start it with. I need firewood. Just 3 pieces. Enough to start a fire." Oluchi looked at her firewood pile beside the house. 6 pieces. She had bought them that morning at the market, walking there early before the good wood was taken, and carrying them back herself, because she could not afford to pay someone to carry them. 6 pieces to last the whole week. Behind her she heard Ngozi's voice, not shouting, just loud enough. "Don't give her," Ngozi said from her doorway. She did not look up from her pounding. "She will sell it." These kinds of people. They find someone kind, and they collect what they can, and they sell it somewhere else. Oluchi looked at Ngozi. She looked at the firewood. She looked at Mama Uzo, who had not reacted to Ngozi's words at all. Had not stiffened, had not looked away, had not shifted her weight. Just stood there patient and still, the way she always stood. Oluchi bent down. She picked up 3 pieces of firewood. She held them out. Mama Uzo took them. She held them against her chest carefully, the way you hold something you value. She looked at Oluchi. Her bright eyes were very steady. "Your mother raised you well," she said. She turned and walked away. Ngozi made a sound with her teeth that said everything she did not bother to say with words. She went inside. Her door closed firmly. Oluchi stood in the empty compound. The sun was hot on the back of her neck. She looked at the 3 remaining pieces of firewood. She told herself 3 was enough. She would be careful. She would manage. She went inside. She sat on her mat. She looked at nothing for a while. Her hands were in her lap and they were not shaking, but they were not completely still either. She did not know the name for what she was feeling. It was not regret. It was something more like the feeling after you jump from a height, when you are already in the air and the thing is done and your body has not yet decided what to make of it. She told herself she had done right. She got up. She started the fire with the remaining wood. She cooked. After the firewood, the women stopped being quiet about it. They did not fight, they did not shout. Cool, but they talked. At the water tap in the early morning, on the path to the market, in the lowered voices that women use when the subject is someone they care about and disagree with at the same time. "She has no mother to guide her," Mama Kelechi said one morning. "That is the real problem. A girl that age, alone, needs an older woman to tell her when to say no. Her mother would never have allowed this. Her mother was the same," Ngozi said, "always cooking extra, always giving. But her mother had a husband. She had someone to make sure the house did not empty itself." She lowered her voice. "Oluchi has nobody. The landlord's wife, who was younger than the others and usually stayed out of compound politics, had started watching Mama Uzo's house in the evenings. She reported what she saw to anyone who would listen, which was nothing. That was the point. Nothing. No fire, no light, no sound, not ever. Something is not right about that woman, she said. Normal people make noise. Normal people have smoke from their kitchen. That house is dead. Josie tried one more time with Oluchi directly. She stopped her on the compound path one evening and held both her hands in both of hers and looked her in the face with the expression of a woman who has run out of indirect ways to say something. Oluchi, when last did you eat a full meal? Not a small thing. A full proper meal. Oluchi opened her mouth. She closed it. That is what I thought. Ngozi kept holding her hands. You are giving what you need to survive. You gave your food. You gave your firewood. What will she ask for next? And what will you give then? She pressed her hands tighter. I am not saying be a hard person. I am saying you matter too. Your life matters. You cannot pour from an empty cup. Oluchi listened. She said thank you. She meant it. That night she sat on her mat with her cooking pot in front of her. She looked at how much was inside. She counted what she had left until the end of the week. It was not a lot. It was enough. Barely enough, if she was careful, and nothing unexpected happened. She thought about Ngozi's face, the way Mama Kelechi had looked at her. She thought about what the landlord's wife had said about the dark house with no fire and no smoke. Maybe they were right. She was 20 years old. She was alone. She had no net under her to keep giving from a place of barely enough. What was that? Was it her mother's wisdom, or was it something else? Was it strength, or was it the kind of softness that looked like strength but was really just an inability to say no? She told herself clearly, firmly, looking at the pot. If Mama Uzo came again, she would be kind. She would be polite. But she would not give. She had done enough. She had done her part. She would not give again. She believed this. She went to sleep believing it. She woke up still believing it. She went through the whole next day believing it. Right up until the moment Mama Uzo knocked on her door. Mama Uzo came back on a Friday evening. Oluchi was dishing her food, a proper meal, the kind she had promised herself she would keep for herself. When she heard the knock, she put down the ladle. She stood still. She breathed. She walked to the door. She opened it. The old woman was standing there in the last of the evening light, bent, patient, her walking stick, her bright eyes. My daughter, she said, I need something. My granddaughter is sick, very sick. The herbalist said she needs a special leaf, the kind that grows only by the stream. It must be picked in the evening, when the light is going. I am too old and too slow to walk that path in the dark. Will you go for me? Oluchi looked at her. The stream path. She knew it. Everyone in Ogwuta knew it. It cut through the bush behind the compound, wide enough in the daytime, but at night the trees closed over it, and the sounds changed, and it became the kind of path that people described to each other in the daytime and avoided after dark. Mama, she said carefully, it is already almost dark. I know, the old woman said. That is when the leaf must be picked, in the going light. Not in full dark, not in full day, just at this time. She did not blink. She did not lean forward. She just stood, very still, and waited. Oluchi thought about the path. She thought about the food going cold on the table behind her. She thought about everything she had told herself the night before. Let me get my lamp, she said. She got her lamp. She turned it very low so it gave just enough light to see by. She followed the old woman out of the compound gate, through the main path, on to the smaller path that bent toward the bush. The trees on either side grew taller as they went. The light from the compound faded behind them. The sounds faded too. The children, the cooking, the ordinary noise of evening. The bush sounds took their place. Something moving in the leaves. The call of a nightbird very far away. The path under her feet. Mama Uzo walked ahead, her stick tapping, slow and steady, never hurrying, never stopping. Oluchi followed. Her heart was beating fast like a drum. She held the lamp up. The small flame made the shadows on either side of the path move in ways that were not comfortable to look at directly. She kept her eyes on the old woman's back. They walked for a long time, much longer than the stream should have taken. The path curved and dipped and then curved again. Oluchi lost her sense of how far they had come. The trees were very dark and very close, and overhead the sky was almost black now, with just a thin strip of deep blue above the tree line, where the last of the light was going. And then Mama Uzo stopped. She stopped in the middle of the path, her stick on the ground. Her bent back. She did not move. "Mama," Oluchi said. Her voice came out very small. "Are we at the stream?" The old woman did not answer. Oluchi took one step forward. Then she stopped. Something was changing. She could see it, but she did not have the right word for it. The old woman's shape was changing. Not in a frightening way, not all at once, but steadily and completely, like watching a thing become what it actually was after you had been seeing it wrong for a long time. Her back straightened. Slowly at first, then all at once. The bent became upright, became tall. The walking stick fell from her hand and hit the ground and lay there. She grew, not larger, just fuller, the way a thing looks when the weight that was pressing it down is lifted. The torn wrapper became something clean and deep blue, on the colour of the sky in that thin strip above the trees. Her hair, which had been grey and flat, became something else. She turned around. Her face was not old. It was not young. It was something that had no age on it, because it had not been made to have an age. And her eyes, those bright eyes that Oluchi had noticed from the very first morning, were not an old woman's eyes at all. They were the eyes of something that had been watching and waiting, and was now, finally, finished waiting. Oluchi's lamp shook in her hand. Her back hit the tree behind her. Her mouth was open. "Do not be afraid," the woman said. Her voice was not scratchy and slow anymore. It was clear and warm and deep, like water moving over clean stones at the bottom of a fast river. "I am not here to hurt you. I have never been here to hurt you." Oluchi could not speak. "You followed me," the woman said. There was something in her voice that was almost like satisfaction, the way a teacher sounds when a student finally does the thing they have been waiting for them to do. "I wondered how long it would take. So, if your heart is beating fast right now, subscribe and turn on your notifications, because what this woman tells Oluchi next, it will change everything you thought you understood about this story. And you do not want to miss it." The woman told Oluchi to sit down. Oluchi's legs were not working properly. She sat on the root of the tree she had been pressing her back against. She held the lamp in both hands to stop it shaking. The flame was very small. The bush around them was very dark. The woman stood in front of her, tall, blue, unhurried, and she began to speak. Her name was not Mama Uzo. She had taken that name for this village the way you take a coat from a hook, because it was useful, because it fit the shape of what she needed to be. She took a different name in every place. An old beggar woman was the easiest shape to walk in. Nobody watched where old beggar women went. Nobody followed them. Almost nobody. She was one of the old ones. Not a god, she said this clearly, and she said it the way a person corrects something they have been mistaken for before and have grown tired of the mistake. Not a ghost. Something older than either and harder to put a name on. The grandmothers used to know what to call her kind. They built it into their prayers and their libations and the small rituals done before the planting and before the rains. But that knowing had gotten thin. But the way cloth gets thin when it is washed too many times, until most people had forgotten what they were doing when they poured water on the ground and why it mattered. She walked through villages. She had been doing it for longer than Ogwuta had existed. She came to every compound in a village in every generation, and she knocked on every door. She asked for small things: food, firewood, a cup of water, help with a path at night, small things that cost something to give and nothing to refuse. And she watched very carefully. In your compound, she said, I went to 12 doors. In the 5 weeks I have been in Ogwuta, I knocked on 12 doors. She looked at Oluchi. You are the only one who opened every time. The only one who gave every time, even when you were hungry yourself, even when the cost was real. Oluchi thought about Ngozi, about Mama Kelechi, about the landlord's wife turning her back at the water tap. Ngozi opened the first time, the woman said. She gave a little, a small portion, carefully measured. The second time I came to her door, she saw me through her window. She sat down on her mat and she waited, very still until I went away. She paused. She is not a bad woman. She is a careful one. But she opened her hand once and then closed it. That has a consequence. What consequence? Oluchi said. Her voice was steadier than she expected, a heaviness. Nothing that will break her. But her husband's small business that was starting to grow, it will slow down this year, stall, feel stuck. Her oldest child who is doing well in school will struggle. Things she plants will be slow to grow. She will feel it without understanding it, the way you feel the weather changing in your bones before the sky shows anything. And Mama Kelechi? The woman was quiet for a moment. The bush was very still around them. Mama Kelechi did not open a single time, she said. Not once. She heard me knock and she went to the back of her house and stayed there until I left. She did this every time I came. A pause. Her yam barn will be empty before the next harvest. Her palm trees will not fruit this season. The things she has been saving, carefully, quietly for years, will begin to cost more than they should and earn less than they used to. She will spend the year tightening and wondering why the tightening does not stop. The woman's voice carried no anger in it, no satisfaction. She was simply describing what was. She did nothing wrong by the rules she knows. She protected what was hers. But the world runs on older rules than those. And the landlord's wife? The landlord's wife looked me in the face with soup on her fire and told me she had nothing. The woman did not say anything more about her. She did not need to. The words sat in the air and held their own weight. Oluchi sat with all of this. The night was completely quiet now. Even the nightbirds had stopped. Just the dark and the woman in blue and the small flame of the lamp. What did you leave in my house? Oluchi said. The woman looked at her for a long moment. It was the look of someone who has been waiting for the right question. Go home, she said. Look under your mat. But what? Go home, Oluchi. Her voice was warm, not dismissing our landing. Like a hand placed flat on a table to end a conversation that has reached its point. Some things are better found than explained. She stepped forward. She put both hands on Oluchi's head. The warmth was not the warmth of hands. It was not even the warmth of fire. It was something older and steadier, the warmth of something that has been burning for so long it has forgotten it was ever cold. Oluchi felt it enter the top of her head and move through her neck and her chest and her belly and her legs and all the way down to the soles of her feet, slowly, like warm water poured into cold water, spreading and spreading until it reached every part of her. It was the feeling of being full. Not full after eating, full the way a house feels full when everyone who belongs in it is home. Full the way a season feels full when the rains come at the right time and everything that was planted grows. The hands lifted. Oluchi looked up. The woman was gone. The path was empty. The trees were just trees. The dark was just dark. There was no blue wrapper, no tall figure, no bright eyes. Just the bush, and the sound of insects starting up again, and the small flame of her lamp. She sat there for a moment. Then she got up. She walked back through the bush path. She was not afraid. She did not hurry. The path felt shorter going back than it had coming, the way paths always do after you have walked them once and know where they end. She walked through the compound gate. Past Ngozi's house, dark and quiet. Past Mama Kalechi's house, no fire lit, no cooking smell. Past the old woman's house, closed, dark, exactly as it had always been. She did not look at it too long. She went to her own door. She went inside. She got down on her knees. She pulled up the mat. The small tin she used for saving was there. She opened it. She looked inside. She did not count it that night. She sat back on her heels and she looked at what was in the tin, and she felt something move through her that was too big and too quiet for tears, and not exactly joy either. Something closer to recognition. The feeling of a thing landing where it was always going. She closed the tin. She put it back under the mat. She pulled the mat over it. She lay down. Outside, she could hear the compound settling into night. Through the thin walls, she could hear Ngozi moving around, opening a cupboard, closing it, opening it again, or the restless sound of someone who cannot find what they are looking for and does not know what it is. Further away, Mama Kalechi's compound was very quiet. No sound of cooking, no sound of her usual evening prayer. The landlord's wife's lamp was on, but no shadow moved behind her window. Oluchi lay in the dark and looked at the ceiling and thought about her mother, about the rule, about every evening she had given when she did not have enough, about the 3 pieces of firewood and the food she had not eaten and the long walk through the dark bush. She did not feel lucky, not exactly. She felt something quieter, something more like understanding. The way you understand something after you have lived it, not because someone explained it, but because your body went through it and came out the other side and knows now in a way the mind alone cannot know. She closed her eyes. She slept. In the morning she counted the tin. Then she put it away. Then she went to the market, the main one, the good one, and she bought food. Real food. More than she usually bought. Enough for herself and enough besides. She cooked until the pot was full and heavy, and the smell of it went through the whole compound. Properly cooked, properly salted, the way her mother used to cook when there was enough. When it was done, she dished a big portion onto her best enamel plate. She walked to Ngozi's door. She knocked. Ngozi opened the door. She looked at the plate. She looked at Oluchi. Something moved across her face, complicated and quick, like a shadow crossing water. Not guilt exactly, not surprise exactly. Something between the two that had no clean name. Eat, Oluchi said. She held out the plate. Ngozi took it in both hands. She stood there holding it for a moment. Then she said quietly, Oluchi. Where did you— Just eat, Oluchi said. The food is getting cold. She went back to her house. She dished a plate for Mama Kalechi's children, who she could hear playing in the compound. She filled a smaller bowl and left it on the landlord's wife's step without knocking. She did not explain anything to anyone. She went back inside. She sat at her own table. She ate her own food, a full plate, hot, properly salted, for the first time in longer than she wanted to count. The pot was still half full when she was done. She looked at it. She thought about her mother. She thought about the rule. She thought about all the years her mother had cooked a little extra, just in case, without ever knowing who the just in case was for. Now Oluchi knew. The just in case was for everything. For the hungry neighbour at the door. For the bent old woman with the bright eyes. For the world that was watching, always watching, in ways too old and too patient to be seen, until you had lived long enough and given enough and walked far enough into the dark to finally understand what was out there. She got up. She washed the pot. She set it back on the fire. She started making a little extra, just in case. In Ogvuta, the old people used to say that a generous hand is never truly empty. They said it the way people say things they believe in the bones, but can no longer fully explain. As a proverb, as something to tell children before they are old enough to understand it, as words spoken before the rains that nobody remembers starting to say. Oluchi understood it now, not because someone explained it to her, because she lived it, because she gave when she was hungry, she gave when she was tired, she gave when the women around her said she was foolish, and when her own voice inside her said, maybe they are right. And the world, which is larger and older and more watching than anyone in Oguta had known, had seen. Mama Uzo's house was empty by morning. The weeds grew back. The door went locked again. The children went back to daring each other to touch it. Nobody spoke about the old woman. It was as if she had been there, and also as if she had never been there. The way certain things are when they belong to the category of things that happen outside of what the ordinary day is built to hold. But Oluchi kept cooking every evening. She kept making a little extra. She kept her door open at dusk just for a moment in case. Not because she was waiting for something, because it had become her. The way her mother's rule had always been her, underneath everything, waiting to be understood. The sun does not ask permission before it shines, and a kind heart does not ask whether it will be repaid before it gives. You give because it is right. You give because someone taught you to. You give because there are things in this world that are very old and very patient, and they are watching every open hand and every closed one. And they remember. They always remember. You just watched a woman give everything she had, her food, her firewood, the last of her strength, to someone the whole village said was not worth giving to. And she did it because her mother told her to, because the rule was in her before she knew it was a rule. But here is something the women of Oguta never knew, something that changes the whole story. Oluchi was not the first. In the village of Umuez, a man married a woman who came to his door the same way Mama Uzo came to Oluchi's. Quietly, with nothing, asking for just a little. And what he found out on his wedding night, what the lamp revealed, is the kind of thing that stays with you long after the story is over. That story is already waiting for you. Subscribe now and turn on your notifications so you do not miss it. Because the next woman who knocks on your door, you may want to look at her a little more carefully than you think.